Welcome, everyone, to 451 Degrees, the anti-censorship podcast on the Unsafe Space network. Joining me today is Dave Seminara.
Hey, good
morning.
Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning to you, too. This will be airing in the afternoon, but yes, it is the morning when we're doing this. Very early for me because I'm in Phoenix. But you are the author of Mad Travelers, A Tale of Wanderlust, Greed, and the Quest to Reach the Ends of the Earth, Footsteps of the Federer, which that's about the tennis player, yes?
That's about Roger Federer, yeah, exactly.
Yes. Where else? Your titles are so long. Breakfast for Polygamists, Dispatches from the Margins of the Americas, Bed, Breakfast, and Drunken Threats, Dispatches from the Margins of Europe. So you have they're like travel books, so nonfiction, and
yep.
And you've traveled a lot in your life. Formerly, you were in the U.S. Foreign Service, and you were at embassies in Macedonia, Trinidad, and Hungary. And when I was looking you up, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And part of me was like wanting to pick your brain a little bit about how you think about how the U.S. is handling their foreign policy a bit, because it seems to be, from my perspective, a bit of a debacle.
Ma'am, we'll see. If we have time, let's get to that.
Okay. Now, when I was also doing my research, though, I found you have, now a lot of people ask this question of, like, how do I know what company not to work with that are woke? It's so frustrating. And, but you actually have a list on your website of all these companies that have proven themselves woke, either by, I know that if they protested the Georgia voting bill, if they protested the Florida bill about that they call Don't Say Gay, which isn't true, and then some other ones. And what, I know you said you started making that list because you said you would just love to be able to, like, I know you have an article saying, I would love to have a shave that wasn't woke. And you also have articles about how do you know which companies are woke, and so you would like to keep updating that list, yes?
Oh, I've continued to update that. The reason why that started was a couple of years ago, I've written a couple pieces about woke corporations for the Wall Street Journal. And I've never received so much feedback about anything I've ever written in my life, because it really resonates with a lot of people who are frustrated with how, and not just Republicans either, but just people in general are really sick of companies virtue signaling and being woke. And I got so much feedback, and most of the people who were writing to me were saying, do you happen to have a list of woke companies? And I didn't, but I got that message so often that I thought, okay, there's a demand for this and I don't see anybody else doing it. So yes, I have maintained lists of woke companies on my website, and it's getting longer and longer and longer and longer. So now the question people are asking me is, do you have a list of companies that aren't woke? So I think maybe when I retire, I'll work on that project. But trying to find companies that aren't woke, that takes some real detective work. It doesn't take Inspector Clouseau to find woke corporations these days, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, exactly, because there was the Nabisco, commercial for Oreos, and then the Gillette commercial where like, oh no, you can't talk to women on the street randomly, they virtue signal so often that it's actually kind of easy to spot them when they do it. Now, do you think that these woke companies are truly woke, or do you think they are just playing to a certain demographic to try to get either their business or to try to whitewash some of the stuff that they might do that is not exactly progressive?
Oh, I think both. I think all of the above. I think in some cases that the leadership of these companies, they are true believers, especially when you start talking about companies that are in Silicon Valley or other, much more progressive areas of the country. I think in some cases that these people are true believers. They really are left. But I think in many cases they're not. They're just cynically trying to get the left off of their backs. Because let's face it, putting out a tweet about Pride Month. That doesn't cost anything, does it?
No, I suppose not. I think a lot of people have recognized, though, that the fact that they're willing to virtue signal in Europe and the U.S., but not especially for Pride Month, but not in, say, the Middle East, makes it like, kind of obvious that they are lying to some regard about how they actually feel about it. But you have speaking of the idea of other nations and everything, you have an article called "To Fully Appreciate America, You Have to Leave It." And I think this is a big topic among people who talk about the culture war, that a lot of the people who say they hate America have never been outside of America. They've never been to one of these nations like that is socialist or similar. And it's kind of like, it's an argumentative failing of theirs to say that, and them to have never gone anywhere else. But I think you have a much more positive take on it, though, because you're basically saying expand your horizons. And where do you think? What do you think the benefits are specifically of going to another nation as an American?
I believe in travel. I believe in it wholeheartedly. I call myself on my website a pathological traveler. And I am an addict, and I mean that in the truest sense of the term. I am a compulsive traveler. And I think that there's pros and cons to travel. You can go a little too far with it, but I think you can't really have a perspective of the world if you're in the United States all the time. A lot of our problems are first world problems. We still do have relatively clean water that we can drink. I mean, you'd be amazed how few countries around the world you can just drink tap water from. That's a simple pleasure. But every problem that we face, none of them, we don't have a single problem in this country that is unique to America. And that includes police misconduct. It includes racism. It includes sexism. It includes homophobia. And in fact, if I had to rate, there's 193 countries in the world, according to the United Nations. If I had to rate our country in terms of any of those problems that I just mentioned, police misconduct, racism, sexism, homophobia, any of those, I would say we are amongst the top 10 best countries in the world in any measure that you choose to take. So try your luck in Uzbekistan. Try your luck in Mauritania. Try your luck in Qatar. See how far you get. So that bothers me when people point out problems that we have and try to make it seem as though we're the only country in the world that has that problem. No, look at every country in the world for racism. Every country in the world. Look at Mexico, for example. I've spent a lot of time in Mexico. Turn on the television stations in Mexico. Look at all of the white faces you see. Do you see any indigenous faces when you turn on the news, when you turn on Mexican soap operas? No, you see people like Jorge Ramos, who's got blue eyes and white skin. Racism is not an American problem. It's a global problem. It's a global phenomenon. I don't want to go on too long here, but yes, absolutely. Travel, and don't just travel to the Cinque Terre and to Florence and to London. Travel to uncomfortable places. When you look at a list of 193 countries, only about 25 or 30 of those are countries that people go on vacation in, for the most part. Only 25 or 30 of those countries out of 193 are countries that most people would actually want to live in were Americans, right? So you've got 100, 150 countries out there whose citizens want to get out. 100 countries is probably about maybe even more than that. There's probably 100, 125 countries in the world that are sending people out, that people are looking to escape, that are looking to flee. And where do they want to come? The number one country in the world that migrants and refugees would like to come to is the United States. And guess what? That is true wherever region you survey. Could be Africa, it could be Latin America, it doesn't matter. You ask people, where would you like to go? And they say the United States. Well, really? Why would you want to go to the United States? It's such an awful, horrible, racist, terrible country, right? Well, guess what? That's news to a lot of people around the country. They haven't gotten that press release.
Yeah, I once asked that question in a conversation. I was like, wait a minute, if this place is really so bad, why does everybody want to come here? And, because it puts to the lie the argument that this place is terrible. It's obviously the US is not terrible. I mean, or at least we are much better than a lot of places if a lot of people still want to come here.
No. We live in very ignorant times, unfortunately.
That's true. That is very true. Now you've been writing some more conservative leaning articles for a while. You've written on immigration. I saw you did write about Ukrainian immigrants wanting to come here, but you have a huge list of articles that you've written, and some of them are on sports, which I found kind of interesting. But it makes sense considering you wrote a book about Federer. But in like why immigration enforcement is a necessary evil. That's from 2017. Like, so these have been around for a while, and I know you said that this is most likely the reason why you faced difficulties with Goodreads with reviews. Now, I wouldn't say that your articles are all that inflammatory.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I try to be as anti-inflammatory as I can be, but I'm not exactly prednisone.
That made sense to me because I used to take prednisone.
Me too.
But like, there's this. I know that. So what happened is that you got a review on Mad Travelers.
Can I put review in air quotes while we're at it?
Yeah, review. I don't consider this a real review either. That said that you clearly hate women, and but the topic of the book has nothing to do with women. There's no women in it. It's based on real things that happen. So there's and the idea. I know this is their next track. Oh, so he wrote a book without any women in it. So that's somehow evidence that he doesn't hate women. Go ahead.
To clarify, there are some women in the book. However, the characters in the book are all men, and for a specific reason is that the book is about wanderlust, and it's in order to tell the story about wanderlust and what a powerful force wanderlust is and how it makes us want to travel. I used a central story about a young British gentleman who the world's most traveled people thought was a billionaire, who was taking them to some really incredible and exotic places. But then eventually it turned out that this person was not who they thought he was. He was not a billionaire. In fact, he's a working class young man. And he owed them an awful lot of money and scheduled a lot of trips that never ended up happening. I don't want to give away really sort of the ending of the book, but all of these people, that young William Bakelin is the name of the individual. At least they thought that's what his name was. He's the main character of the book. And many of the world's most traveled people came under his spell and were taking trips with him. And so the central story is about those people, and they were all men. So I could not change that. It's a nonfiction book. I couldn't change the fact that all the characters were men. However, I did also cite examples of great female travelers in time and history and great female explorers in the book. And I also consulted some female experts about wanderlust and about pathological travel and stuff like that, because there have been some women, especially in Australia, who've done some really interesting research about travel. So it's not exactly accurate to say there's no women whatsoever in the book, but the characters are all men. And so when I got this review, quote unquote review, and I'll just read a tiny little bit of it just so you get an idea of what we're talking about. I have it here on my phone. The author of this, first of all, you're on Goodreads, you're allowed to shelve your review. So it has like a title on it, and it was shelved under awful garbage. So we were off to a rough start from the beginning. And she said that everyone in the book is insufferable, selfish, immature, greedy losers. And that includes the author in this book, including the author, is just the worst. All right, bad, but fair game, right? But then when she got to she was pretty sure that the author hates women. That's where I cried foul. And it would be one thing. She didn't say the author hates women because he wrote X, Y, or Z, or because the book doesn't have female characters, or she didn't explain herself. She just lobbed that grenade out there that the author hates women and didn't explain herself, nor in her review did she have any content about the book whatsoever, leading me to wonder whether she'd even read it. So when I saw that, I looked at the terms of, not the terms of service, but the guidelines, the review guidelines on Goodreads to see if such reviews were permitted. And it seemed as though they were not, because there was a there is a rule against personal attacks and ad hominem attacks. So I thought, but no content about the book saying that I'm the worst and I hate women and so on and so forth. That's a personal attack. So I flagged it and I thought this will be removed, but it wasn't. A few days went by. I flagged it again, and it was upheld. For what reason? You don't know, because you're not dealing with a live person. You flag things. You can send them messages. Goodreads on a contact box. Goodreads is based in San Francisco, by the way. And so what you get back is kind of a form email from who knows who, if it's a human being or you don't know what it is, right? So I did not receive a response. And so I looked at this woman to see who was this. And this was not a person leaving reviews anonymously, right? A lot of people are anonymous internet trolls, and there's nothing you can do about them because they list themselves as, KMG 23 or Michael Jordan fan 23 or something like that, right? This was not that situation. She left this review under her real name with a real photo of herself. And, I don't remember here, but I think she may have also on her profile had a link to one of her websites. So it turned out that this person has 3 different websites, all using her same profile photo, same name. And the name was not, Jane Smith. So it was, an unusual enough name that you knew it was her. So I don't remember if I saw her website linked on her Goodreads profile or not, to be honest with you, or if I Googled her. But one way or another, after they refused to remove the review, I thought I would like to email this person and ask her what she meant by this. Why would she say something like that about me? And I responded in the same way I would if someone had written the same sort of review about me in the Washington Post. I would have done the same thing, essentially like a letter to the editor type situation, right? So Goodreads wouldn't remove it. I saw on her website that she had a contact box, a contact me box. So I contacted her using a box on her website. And again, she didn't have to respond if she didn't want to, right? I sent her a contact request saying, I'm the author of this book. I saw what you wrote. Why would you say that I hate women? And she responded from her personal email address, right? Stating, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the email in front of me, but stating essentially that you portrayed all of the female characters in the book are portrayed as villains. And I thought, female characters in the book? First of all, there aren't any female characters in the book. Secondly, the only person who could be portrayed as a villain in the book is William Bakeland, the young man, right, who was posing as a billionaire. So I asked her, what female characters are you talking about? And she never responded. And I thought, what are you going to do? I chalked it up and I thought, well, that's the end of that. That's the end of that situation. Nothing I can do about it. I tried to get it removed. I tried to get an explanation. That's it. But a couple of days later, I checked the Goodreads page again, and I saw that, on Goodreads, the way a lot of these websites work is not just Goodreads, but Google, Amazon, all of their metrics work is that the most liked reviews are the ones that are bumped up to the very top. Not necessarily the default setting isn't newest reviews, it's most liked. So her review, she'd gotten a number of people to like it. So now when you looked at my book on Goodreads, the very first thing you saw was her review stating that I hate women. I thought, oh, this is great. This is great. So this is not great. So then at that point, I saw it, and not only was her review there, but she also had a comment stating that and again, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but something along the lines of, I hunted down her personal email address and harassed her and tried to bully her into removing her review. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but she wrote something like that on there. I thought, oh boy. And this is the first thing you see on Goodreads when some unsuspecting person looks up my book, not knowing who I am, anything about me, is that I hate women and that I hunted her personal email address down and so forth, right? So at this point, I went back to the thread from before and I said, I'm going to call her Courtney, even though her name isn't Courtney, because that's the article that I wrote about this affair in City Journal. I referred to her as Courtney, so I'm going to refer to her as Courtney. I said, Courtney, why are you lying about me? Please stop telling lies about me online. Something very curt and to the point like that. And she responded back and said, don't contact me again. I said, okay, fine, I don't want to. Believe me, I'm not enjoying our correspondence anyways. Believe me, I don't want to be your friend. Fine. So I thought, I'm never going to contact her again. Anyways, unrelated conversation I'm having with, of all people, William Bakeland a few days later, maybe a week later. Okay, well, again, William Bakeland is the young billionaire from my book, quote unquote billionaire from my book, okay? We were talking because there was a film production company in the UK that was interested in purchasing the film rights to my book, Mad Travelers, and they wanted William's participation. So I was corresponding with William to see whether he'd be interested in that. And William had just happened to have told me that he sued a British newspaper who wrote an article about him. He claimed that he reached an out-of-court settlement in his favor for libel. And I thought, that's really interesting. And so I sent William a link to my Goodreads page and said, somebody just wrote a review about me, and I think that I think was libelous. And he said, let me take a look at it. And of course, I never thought that he was going to take the initiative to also send this woman an email, but he did, because he took offense to the first part of her review, because mind you, he's the main character of the book, and you heard my quote, I'm not going to read it again, what she said about the people in the book, right? So he took offense to her review as well, too. And I have to say, William is a bit of a wild card. He forwarded me the next day or a day later what he sent to her. Now, meanwhile, mind you, this happens, right? I don't know what's going on. I send William this thing. The next day, I get an urgent phone call from the publisher, my publisher, Post Hill Press, okay? Now, Post Hill Press is a relatively small publisher. However, they are they have a distribution agreement with Simon & Schuster, okay? One of the biggest publishing companies in the world. And Simon & Schuster distributes all of my books, both Footsteps of Federer and Mad Travelers, okay? And the publisher, I'm telling you this, essentially paraphrasing, what he's saying is that we've got a big problem on our hands here, because you have someone who is calling lots of people at Simon & Schuster and Amazon and Goodreads and trying to get you canceled. And I said, you're kidding me. What is going on here? And by this point, I hadn't even checked my email that day, right? So I thought, oh, this is bad. Okay, this is very bad. And he said, just lay low right now. We'll try to put out the fire, whatever. I told him the facts. Then I go to check my email, and I see there's an email from William Bakeland. And I thought, oh, no. And William was forwarding me his correspondence with Courtney. I thought, oh, no. So he contacted Courtney and said in a nutshell that he was going to sue her. He threatened her with a lawsuit, right? And mind you, William is known for threatening people with lawsuits. While I was researching the book, William threatened me repeatedly with lawsuits because he was worried what I was going to write in my book, and that I wasn't going to be fair, and so on and so forth, right? So I was also a target of William at one point while I was researching this. And then surprisingly, as it turned out, the book came out and William loved it, which really surprised me more than anyone after all the lawsuit threats. But anyways, so I thought, oh, no, this is bad. And I'm looking at the correspondence between Courtney and William, not the real name of either one of them, by the way. And Courtney was telling William that, I know this is you, Dave, so quit trying to pretend like you are William Bakeland. So she thought that this wasn't really William Bakeland contacting her, but actually me impersonating the quote unquote villain from my book. So are you following along here? Hope this isn't getting too confusing for everyone here. So weirdly enough, the purported villain of my book, right, came to my defense, but not me asking him to, not me wanting him to. If he'd asked me, I would have said, do not contact her. Please don't do that. But he did, right? And then my nemesis, this woman who's trying to get me canceled with my distributor and with my books pulled off of Amazon, Simon & Schuster trying to stop distributing me, thinks that I'm impersonating William. Oh, what a mess. What a mess. So William says, I told William, please do stop, first of all. Send her a message back telling her that it is you and not me. And please do not, and then don't email her ever again, right? So he said, fine, I'll do that. And he said, also, I will leave a review, because then by this point, okay, then after I see the email from William, I went back onto my Goodreads page, and all of a sudden, my books, not just Mad Travelers, but all 4 of them are getting slammed, getting absolutely slammed, not just with her, but she got a lot of people to not only write either 1-star reviews or on the thing on Goodreads is too, which really, I think, emboldens people, cancel culture, is that you can also just rate books. You don't even have to leave a review. So you can just click 1 star and you're done in 2 seconds, right? So a lot of people wrote negative, bad things about me, but a lot of other people just were slamming all 4 of my books. Boom, boom, boom. You can slam, I've got 4 books out. You can slam 1 star on all 4 of them. It takes 15 seconds on Goodreads. That's how quickly you can trash somebody. So my books, to give you an idea, like Footsteps of Federer, for example, I think before this cancellation campaign, my average was at like 4.15 stars or something like that. I looked on the page that morning and it was down to like 3.75, which to go that far, it takes, in one morning, that's quite a bit. So I'm looking at these things, and I had literally dozens of people who had given me 1-star ratings and some people 1-star reviews. But more troublingly, they were all, a number of them wrote things echoing her comments, saying that I hate women or that I'm a misogynist and so on and so forth. Continue. And again, not a single one of them with an ounce of corroboration, not Seminara hates women for whatever reasons. And a couple of them were saying again that I bullied Courtney and that I harassed her and was stalking her and threatening her with lawsuits, right? And in that vein, and they were all liking each other's reviews too of saying this, right? And by this point, Courtney had deleted her review and deleted her entire profile from Goodreads. So a couple of the reviews said that she felt so scared of me that she deleted her Goodreads profile and so on and so forth because I was threatening her with lawsuits. Oh my goodness. Total nightmare, right? So I thought, I felt literally under siege. I've never felt so powerless in my entire life because all of a sudden, all of the decades of building up your reputation, trying to build your reputation as an honest writer, as an honest person, as a good and decent person, as a father, as a husband, all of a sudden, this isn't just people saying that your book sucks, right? As an author, as a writer, I'm used to people saying that you have to get used to rejection and critiques as a writer, right? I'm used to people saying the thing that you wrote is wrong because of X, Y, or Z reason. I'm used to people saying this is boring, this sucks, or this stinks for whatever reason. What I was not used to until April of this year was people saying, you're a horrible person, you're a bad person, which is what all these people were saying about me. And so I felt completely under attack, and I thought, well, how do I defend myself now, right? Publishers telling me to be quiet, don't do anything. And all they were hoping for was for this thing to blow over. And, my publisher reminded me too, he said, you sell 70% of your books on Amazon. He said, we cannot risk you falling on the wrong side of Amazon, right? And we cannot risk having our distribution with Simon & Schuster jeopardized, right? And you're talking about two very woke corporations, Simon & Schuster and Amazon. They're going to take her side. Doesn't matter whether the truth is on my side, doesn't make any difference. And by the way, as I was corresponding with, some faceless people on Goodreads at this point, I sent them e-copies of all my books. And I said, please, show me any offending material in any of the 4 books that I've written. Show me a quote, show me one sentence that I've written which would corroborate a claim that I have some ill feelings towards women. Send me one thing. Nothing. They couldn't send me anything because there's nothing in any of them. So in any event, long story short, of all people, William Bakelin again tries to come to my defense because I think at this point he feels very bad that he's provoked these people, right? And now they think that I'm impersonating him. So he responded to the reviews saying that I was threatening her with lawsuits and so on and so forth, saying that was him and setting the record straight on all of this. And so he tried to set the record straight for me, and he left what was the best 5-star review of any of my books I have ever read in my life. Of all people, he understood the book, I think, better than anyone, being the main character in it. It was really a beautiful review, I have to say. I read it and I thought, okay, at least something positive has happened here. I got one nice 5 review and dozens of 1-stars. Okay, an hour or two after he left that review and sent it to me, I got an email from Goodreads, and so did he. Both of us were kicked off of the platform. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm leaving one step out. And then I also, since I could not, I tried to respond to some of the comments about me, saying that I hate women and that I was threatening to sue her and all those things. My comments were immediately deleted. Okay. Now, mind you, all the things that I flagged, none of them were deleted. They were all maintained on there. But my reply to her, which contained no vulgarity, no personal attacks, just setting the record straight. I did not threaten to sue anyone, et cetera, et cetera. Those were deleted by Goodreads. Okay. And so that I thought, wow, I cannot do this. So what can I do? I left myself a review at the top of my page, which wasn't a review of my book, but setting the record straight, saying, A, I do not hate women. B, I never threatened to sue anyone, so on and so forth. And then that got kicked, and then I was kicked off of Goodreads within an hour of leaving that. Within 1 hour, I got an email from Goodreads, and so did William. They revoked William's comments. Okay, all of the comments that William made responding to people saying no, it was him trying to sue, were all deleted. His 5-star review deleted. My review deleted. Everything deleted. He and I canceled and kicked off of the platform.
And this is the reader's website. There is, I can't think of anything that even comes close to Goodreads for where people who read a lot go for their community and to speak to writers, or for writers to speak to their audiences. Like, I feel like that is like one of the biggest websites out there, if not the biggest one. So so to me, it's pretty harsh to have it only one side is visible now on that website.
You can't defend yourself, and you can't defend yourself. I was literally kicked off of the website for trying to defend myself factually. And
that's very, very horrible. And I know they and I think you brought this up, the idea that they say that, well, when we cancel people, sometimes they always bring up like a really, really huge name to say that, see, they still survived. And it's like, you're picking like you say we tried to cancel Elon Musk or J.K. Rowling and it didn't work. Like, that's not a really great evidence for all the people who are lower down on the steps. Like you, I mean, it's like, you're not small, but you're not like uncancelable. There's nothing.
This is a really good point, and I want to address that because you're right about that. And so J.K. Rowling's books might have 5,000 reviews, each one of them, right? So, but most books are not like that. Like my books, might have 30, 40, 50 reviews. And that's what most books have if you look at Goodreads, right? If it's not a #1 bestseller, it doesn't have hundreds or thousands of reviews, okay? So prior to this cancel culture storm against me, my books had dozens of reviews, but not hundreds, right? So if someone only has 30, 40, 50 reviews, you can a small group of people, of a couple dozen, maybe 20 people, something like that, can really sink a book's ratings and reviews. Because if you try to sink J.K. Rowling, you could give her 51 star reviews. It's only going to budge her, her star rating a tiny little bit, right? And those negative reviews are going to get lost and miss the thousands of other reviews that are there. But for books like mine, somebody like me is actually pretty easy to target.
Well, and they act as though they don't target. There's a lot of this. Well, they don't target people like that. It's like, clearly they do. Because they'll go after anyone they think that they can take out. Honestly, and then their other defense, though, is that it's accountability culture. But they're like, according to you, what they're trying to hold you accountable for, they have no evidence for. It's just a radioactive term they've thrown at you and branded you with. And the fact that now I'm a firm believer in due process, and I don't believe in mob mentalities when it comes to judging people. So to me, I'm sort of like, there's no court of opinion here where you're getting your side out there. Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because I don't think that's acceptable in a supposedly civilized society. A mob is not civilized, and that's what came after you. Also, on top of that, the fact that she called it harassment after you emailed her twice, like, that's kind of an overreaction, honestly. But
she also, I'm leaving one thing out too, that there was also somebody, probably obviously people who know her, because nobody else would know about our correspondence unless she told them, right? So there was also somebody on Twitter who started a lot of this too, by saying, the quote said, "Today I am targeting Dave Seminara." And the tweet literally started like that, right? And this is, the reason why I'm not even on Twitter, right? So I couldn't defend myself against that, and I didn't find out about it until later. But somebody obviously associated with her, because nobody else would know about our correspondence, if she didn't tell them. So that sort of started there. And I think that that's sort of where the campaign got whipped up. And Courtney herself also was tweeting at different publications that I write for. So she was not only contacting, Amazon and Goodreads. Goodreads is owned by Amazon. Goodreads and Amazon and Simon & Schuster, and also Post Hill Press, but she was also tweeting at publications that I've written for. So for example, the New York Times. She was tweeting at New York Times that her phrase was that I lightly doxed her, whatever that means. Like, how do you dox someone when you are emailing them from your personal email address? So I thought that was rich. So I think that it wasn't just Goodreads, that Twitter also enabled this mob and unleashed this mob against me. And the frustrating thing is that is the fact that Goodreads is allowing this space to be a platform for sort of personal attacks. And as long as it's sort of I think that what happened too is that the one big mistake I made with Goodreads is in one of my correspondences, I wrote to them and I said, I don't know exactly why this group is after me, but I have written a number of conservative themed columns over the years in the Wall Street Journal and other publications. And I said that could be part of it. And I think that that's probably a mistake when you're corresponding with, a company like Goodreads based in San Francisco. They thought, aha. So they weren't going to take my side. So in retrospect, I wished I hadn't done that. However, they probably were going to Google me and find out anyways. So I don't know if it would have made any difference, but they weren't going to take my side in this, which is fine. But the frustrating thing was to not even allow me to defend myself, I thought, and to provide a platform for all of these people to assassinate my character with literally zero references from my books. I mean, you're supposed to be writing reviews of books, not not just attacking people as human beings.
So now that you've gone through that, do you suggest to people who create content to reach out to people who write erroneous reviews after this? Just part of me thinks maybe a hands-off approach would be better. Like, I'm not sure. So I'm wondering, like, is that what you took from this experience?
No, I wouldn't do that again. I mean, the only reason I reached out to her was the sheer frustration of, curiosity and frustration. On the one hand, it was frustration that Goodreads wouldn't remove her comment, even though it violated their community guidelines, their community rules. But also there was just this, this is something I wrote about in the book. One of the key factors of wanderlust is curiosity. The people who have extreme wanderlust, like myself, were hyper curious people. I actually really wanted to know. And I guess I naively thought that perhaps she would tell me why she wrote what she wrote. And I guess that was, naive to think that I might actually get any satisfaction out of it. But I really was kind of curious because even though I have written, conservative themed columns, I've never written anything, about women's issues. Like I don't write about abortion. I don't write about feminism. I don't write about anything like that. So I guess I really wanted to know, what did I write that made you think I was such a horrible person? You just can't help but wonder,
Yeah, that
no, I don't
makes
recommend
sense.
it. But in answer to your question, sorry, no,
Yeah.
I don't recommend that at all. And I think, in retrospect, that's the only mistake I made. I never should have contacted her at all. But I don't regret trying to defend myself. And everything that I wrote on Goodreads, I would write again today. And I also don't like the approach of being quiet about it too, which a number of different people counseled me to do. Oh, just let it blow over. No, I'm not going to let it blow over. I'm going to tell this story because I am a writer, and this is what happened to me, and the story should be told.
I agree with that. I do think that, there's a fine line of what to walk on that, and maybe like making a statement to defend yourself, but maybe not reaching out to an individual like that is probably best, because my thought is there's so many people with cluster B personality disorders out there, and you never know when you're gonna trip on one. And I feel like you did trip on one, unfortunately.
I'm leaving one thing out that is kind of important, I think, too. Actually, the other thing also is that this person on their websites, on at least one of their websites that she maintains, Courtney, she has a book review tab. So she's a book reviewer and a writer. So to me, this is also something different. It's like you've got random members of the public, and then you have book reviewers, right? And actually journalists, writers, right? So now, I mean, I wouldn't say, she's a super successful writer or journalist or anything like that, but she has written apparently she has published articles, and she writes book reviews as well too. So to me, it was like, this is not an ordinary member of the public, if you know what I mean. This is somebody who, I don't know if she actually makes money from what she does or not, but she is a freelance writer. You know, she has published articles. She writes book reviews. So to me, it was sort of like, this is not the same, again, as like, you know, Joe Blow 23 writing an anonymous review about you somewhere. Is that I feel like when someone who is writing under their real name and writes book reviews and such like that says you hate women or whatever, I think that carries a little more weight than an anonymous troll. Like, at least, I don't know about you, but like when I read reviews or comments about things, I give more weight to a review or a comment if it's from a real person, seemingly a real person who has shown me their photo and their name, don't you? So to me, it seemed a little bit more real.
Well, she's kind of, in the world of book reviews, kind of what we would put in the realm of influencers. You know, she has maybe just a small following, but enough, or is trying to cultivate one. Right. So that makes, I mean, you're right. That does make it different. She's not just some random person. And I find this kind of ironic, though, the idea that you got all these 1-star reviews and ratings, because they constantly, especially when it comes to movies on Rotten Tomatoes, they constantly claim that the public is review bombing, or that they've got bots review bombing like a movie that no one likes because it's woke. Usually that's the reason why. But it feels like that's literally what happened to your books once someone decided that you were an ist of some kind. And again, when someone just lobs one of those radioactive terms at you, it seems like they're given a lot of weight, whether or not there's any evidence behind it. Regardless of whether or not you were able to defend yourself, if they let you keep your statements up there, I mean, a lot of these people would still believe it. You know, sadly, I think there's this crowd of people that we're not seeing, and these are the people that you're trying to, you know, tell that you're not sexist in some way, that they're not taking part in the reviews, but they're going to your Goodreads to see whether or not they want to read your book, and it has nothing to do with you as a person, and they don't care. They're not part of this whole battle that is going on in the culture. They just want to read a book, and but then they see all these reviews, and then they don't get to see your responses to them. And I'd say that's usually the real problem we're having here, is that those are the people we're missing. We're missing that we're not arguing against essentially this mob or that influencer. We're arguing to let those people who are not part of the fight know what's actually going on. I think that's missed a lot in the discourse. They're like, oh, you can't win an argument with these people. You're right, you can't. That's not who you're trying to win the argument with.
Right.
And I think you're aware of that from what you've said here today. Now, this website is completely, this podcast is completely about censorship and how it's bad. Now, having experienced a big tech cancellation for Goodreads and a mob assault, which do you consider like the worst type of censorship? Self-censorship, mob censorship, industry censorship, big tech, or government?
Oof, that's an extremely difficult question. They're all terrible. I don't know. I guess, you know, from my perspective, they're all really bad. Self-censorship is right up there, though, I would say, because people are afraid to speak their minds in this country in this era, aren't they? And I think that's kind of one of the most frustrating things. But you know, also being silenced by a big tech company too is also incredibly frustrating, because you feel completely powerless. I mean, in my situation, I felt like the things that were being said about me were as damaging as they could possibly be, right? Because something like 70% of books are purchased by women. So almost the worst thing you can say about a writer is that they hate women. There are a few things that you could say that are worse than that, really. I mean, if they said that I spent time in prison for selling crack, I don't think that would be as damaging as saying that he hates women. And it wasn't just like people were saying, like in the first line of these things after her original review, beware, this author is, all caps. Like, I mean, it wasn't like they were just hiding this and otherwise reviews with content about my book. And these reviews are just being allowed to sit there. So all of those forms of censorship are very bad. Self-censorship is very insidious because people feel like you have to be very quiet. And especially, I shouldn't say people, but I say, it's not just conservatives, but I think especially self-censorship is very evident on the right these days, because if you are a leftist and you work for whatever corporation, Nabisco or Amazon or whomever, you can pretty much get away with spouting your opinions so long as they are fashionable ones, and you don't have to do a whole lot of self-censorship. I don't see a ton of people self-censoring on the left. I'm sure some people are. I mean, it would really depend upon, I think the self-censorship on the left would probably be not at big companies, but I think that if you live in, let's say, Alabama or Texas, and, you work for a trucking company or a landscaping company or some small company that's not woke at all, and you're a liberal, I'm sure people like that practice a lot of self-censorship. But on the right, I think it's much more common because all of the big employers these days are woke. So I think there's a lot of self-censorship on the right. People are afraid of what to say unless they're sure, not even at work and such like that, but I find even in mixed company that those of us who have conservative viewpoints, including myself, I don't bring up politics. I don't want to talk politics with my friends because I know some of them agree with me and some of them don't. So I really only even talk politics with friends of mine who I'm certain agree with me, and I already know agree with me, because I just want to maintain friendly relations with my friends and my relatives. I don't want to argue politics, and I know I'm not going to convince anybody of anything. Unfortunately, most of us have our minds made up about things, right? So there is a tremendous degree of self-censorship. I don't know what can be done about it, but with respect to my case, and with Goodreads, which is owned by Amazon, if I find some sort of a legal defense fund who would like to sue Amazon over this, I would love to do that. I would love to take this company to court because I think that what they did to me was illegal, but I would like to have that proven in a court of law.
I think a lot of our audience would agree with you and would probably support that as well. I definitely don't think that it was morally right of them to do so. And beyond that, I do believe it was illegal because by their own policies, like you said, they had ad hominems were not allowed, and that's exactly what they allowed. So to me, I'm like, right there, that's enough legally. But I believe that you talked about having to self-censor around political topics, around people you're not sure whether or not they agree with you. Do you ever find that people you mentioned the fact that leftists who work for left-leaning companies are vocal. They don't feel the need to self-censor. Do you ever feel like there is in personal relationships that left-leaning people don't feel the need to self-censor either?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I find that a lot. And especially, in my line of work as a writer, I think a lot of my, as I said, because I do, try to keep my politics quiet to some degree, as much as you can if you're writing for some of the largest newspapers in the world and you're spouting your opinions. But the interesting thing is you can exist in a different sort of ecosystem. The really interesting thing is I've got friends and relatives of mine who probably don't even know that I'm conservative leaning at all, because the thing is they would never bother reading something in the Wall Street Journal, for example. You know what I mean? So that's the really interesting thing, is you can exist in totally different universes, and they literally will never even find that stuff because liberals do not look at conservative publications. It's very easy to ignore conservative media, but it's very hard for us conservatives to totally ignore the mainstream media because you're sort of inundated with it. And it's part of the culture. So, if you have a Netflix account, if you have Hulu, if you watch any sort of television at all, you can't really insulate yourself in a conservative cocoon. You could try, but it's very difficult. But liberals can do so very successfully. So yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people who just assume because I'm a writer that I'm liberal. And yet I hear things like, and I live in Florida too, the dreaded state of Florida, which liberals absolutely despise. So I hear, I have some liberal friends have said things to me like, oh, I don't know how you could stand to live in Florida. God, it must be really hard on you. It must be really tough. I think, yeah, God, it's awful, isn't it? And I don't correct them, but I don't lie. But I think, oh yeah, just try to move on to a different topic, because I think, really, you really think that I'm sitting here crying about living in Florida? No, I like it here, actually.
Yeah, I'm actually looking to move to Florida or Texas because Arizona is becoming more and more blue, Maricopa especially. But yeah, I actually agree with you. I think they're less likely to realize that the people around them may not be as left as they are,
Hmm.
unless that. I mean, I've met some conservatives and libertarians who are very, very vocal people. Obviously, I run a podcast, but I don't see it as being as common as left people being as vocal as they are, like just
Hmm.
regular everyday people. And I sometimes, yeah, there's this. You're right. They act like, oh, you were a writer, you're in the arts or whatever, so you must be as liberal as I am or as left as I am, and it's like that's a weird assumption to make. And
Well,
I think, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
I was going to say it's in academia too. The idea that everyone in academia must be left because they're in academia.
Right.
Like there's this weird begging the question kind of fallacy that they have about certain positions, certain industries, that everyone within those industries must be on the left.
Well, I think what I was going to say is underlying that premise is that there are quite a few liberals who they have an idea that anybody who isn't a Democrat is dumb, basically. And so people who know me well know that I'm not stupid. So they assume that, they assume that only like, banjo strumming idiots are conservative. So I think that there's also sort of that disdain which underlies the premise.
Well, and I've been saying this for a while, though. I think to some extent it's because of a left long-term marketing campaign, essentially, to make the right out to be immoral and stupid, which it has worked on their base. I don't know that it's worked on anyone outside of their base necessarily. I mean, maybe some moderates and centrists believe that too, but I've noticed it for more than a decade that they've been doing this. And so when they think that you cannot be smart and be outside of the left, you cannot be moral and be outside of the left. And again, you can't square that circle. It doesn't make any sense when you really think about it. And also, it silences people like you. You don't talk about politics with people that you know are not going to agree with you. And so then there's no dialogue happening. And I think
Right.
that's actually really dangerous in the long term for our culture and our ability to advance policy in our governments.
Right. I will say though that that's when I'm talking about not wanting to talk to people about that. That's like that's in social situations. So when I have people over to my house or things like that, I don't want to argue about politics. However, I would love, 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 love to do interviews with liberal people, liberal podcast hosts, liberal TV stations, liberal. I mean, since I've started as a writer, I've given hundreds of interviews, television interviews, radio interviews, podcast interviews, YouTube interviews, you name it. Do you know how many times I've been invited on liberal shows? Zero. So that is the frustrating thing. I'm perfectly willing to talk politics to people who are in that arena in a professional setting, but they don't want to have someone like me on. So, every time I get an interview request, I can be sure, like, last week, I had some television channel, which I had never heard of before, request an interview with me. And we were out to dinner with my wife. And I said, oh, I got to get back. I've got a television interview with someone. She said, who's it with? And I said, oh, I can't remember. And she said, well, how do you know it's not like something crazy or how do you know it's not this or that? Or don't you have to prepare? And I said, no, because, I didn't even know what it was. And I knew that there was probably someone, it wasn't going to be a hardball interview. I know that they were agreeing with me, that otherwise they wouldn't be inviting me on the show. So you do get a little lazy in a sense too, because I don't have to feel like, if I was going on MSNBC, I'd be like, oh, I better reread my article again and make sure I have all my ducks in order because they're going to be assaulting me. But you just know if someone's asking you for an interview, they probably agree with what you wrote.
Yeah, I mean, I find that kind of funny because I think that's what's happening right here too. Like, I don't necessarily agree with you on every political point, I would
Right.
say, but like when it
You don't
comes
have to.
I know I don't, but I'm not liberal, and which shocks people. It's one of those things where it's like, again, like you said, people who assume because you're a writer, they assume you're liberal. But yeah, I'm not liberal, so I invited you on because I'm a free speech absolutist. That's certainly not a liberal stance these days. Um, but
It
yeah,
should be.
it should be. It should be everybody's stance. Honestly, it should be. But
What do you think the ACLU would say about my case? Like, honestly, I would love to know. Like, I mean, am I due any civil liberties at all? Like, what would I would love to? I would love to talk to someone at the ACLU about my situation. Would they side with me or would they side with my accuser? I have a terrible feeling that they would not champion my cause.
yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I think original ACLU would definitely be on your side. If they were on the side of Nazis being able to make their statements, they're on everybody's side, which is what they were supposed to be. But now they're completely captured. I know we use that word a lot, but they essentially don't believe in civil liberties for everybody anymore. They just don't. And then now there's new organizations popping up like Fair for All and other organizations like that are trying to take the place of the old ACLU, specifically because they still believe in these ideals and are not seeing anyone defend them. So, I mean, there are organizations out there. It's just they're not going to be the ones that we would have gone to, say, 40 years ago, unfortunately.
Right, because the problem is that in this day and age, let's face it, 40 years ago, our whole country and our whole culture was much more conservative than it is now, right? So 40 years ago, liberals were having their free speech rights assaulted, right? They felt like they were under attack. So free speech was a big deal to them. Now it's much more common for conservatives to have their free speech being assaulted and our rights being taken away from us. So obviously free speech is issue 1A for a lot of us. So it's sort of like there's very few liberals who feel like they don't have the ability to speak their minds in this day and age, right? So I don't know. They're forgetting. I'm not saying they're forgetting about the issue entirely, but it's certainly back burner. It's not issue 1A for them, is it?
No, and I'd say some of the big movers and shakers in it are actively against it because they support hate speech laws.
Right.
Which is not, and I remember a couple of years ago, I wrote an article on generational warfare, the okay boomer, millennials are ruining the world kind of attitudes everyone was having. And I looked up what people thought millennials believed in, and what the research believed they believed in. And one of the things they said was that millennials believe that the government should involve themselves in speech and stop people from saying things. And I am a millennial, and I was like, holy crap, that's what my generation believes. What is wrong with them? So to me, I'm sorry, there are a bunch of people who do believe actively that the government should essentially put away with 1A, that it protects everything but hate speech. That's not in there.
And frighteningly enough, the same people are willing to entrust to highly partisan leftist groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center. They're willing to allow groups such as the Southern Poverty Law Center to be the arbiters of what is hate speech or what is not a hate group or whatever. And they'll tar legitimate groups like, for example, the Center for Immigration Studies, for which I've written before, as a quote unquote hate group, lumping them in with the same basket as like the KKK. Why? Because they support reduced levels, not zero level, but reduced levels of immigration. That's enough essentially to get you branded a hate group these days.
Yeah, honestly though, I'd say that hate speech as a policy is so vague. It's vague by design, honestly. Right. So as to take out your political competitors. I don't believe it's sincere. I know that not everyone thinks that, but I don't believe it's sincere. I believe it is a cudgel to be used against your political competitors so that you can get ahead. If you tell everyone this person is hateful and should be shut up, then you never get to hear about what they could possibly do for you, what they could provide, and then people don't vote for them. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, well, we've been going for about an hour. Do you have anything any subject that you really wanted to bring up while on my show?
I think we've had a nice discussion. I think we've covered things pretty well. We don't want to I think belabor the point too much. I've been going on and on for probably 40 minutes of the 1 hour, so I'll leave the last word with you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for telling us your story about Goodreads, because I don't know that everybody knew that Goodreads was doing stuff like that to writers. So it was very important information. And thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sorry.
if you're interested in getting a lot of free reading material, go to my website, which is daveseminara.com. At least links to free reading material. A lot of the published articles that I've written are on there. If there are paywalls on some of them, sorry about that. But people who are savvy know how to get around those. It's daveseminara.com, and my last name is spelled like the word seminar, but with an A at the end. So daveseminara.com. And I also have my book is called Mad Traveler, but also remember that I also have a YouTube channel called Mad Traveler, and I'm on Instagram too, which is Mad Traveler Dave. So check me out.
Thank you again, and thank you for telling everyone where they could find you. I really appreciate that. This has been 451 Degrees on the Unsafe Space Network. If you like this video, please walk your fingers over to the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And I would really appreciate it if you would share this video and let your friends, family, share it on social media, all that stuff. Thank you again, everyone, for joining me for another episode of 451 Degrees.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you're new to Unsafe Space, check out our deep content library that includes discussions with everyone from James Lindsay to Brett Weinstein. And please consider helping to fund our work by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on a variety of social media platforms, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space Discord server, which is open to financial supporters at any level. We hope to see you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production does not meet WHO health and safety standards. Please report to a United Nations Sanitization Center immediately. Association with the following individuals is strictly prohibited. Experts who benefit from printing money agree that printing money does not cause price inflation. Trust me, just 2 more weeks to slow the spread of monkeypox. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.